I'm here with Julian Yarr, who's the managing partner of L Goodbody, one of the nominees in the 2016 Most Trusted Leader. Julian, you're very welcome.
Hi John, how are you?
Great. So Julian, just firstly, if you could tell me a little bit about L Goodbody.
Sure. L Goodbody is one of Ireland's largest law firms. Whilst we only practice Irish law, most of our business would be for big corporates, financial institutions or government agencies who interact with Ireland. And that means Irish companies or it means international companies who are looking to come to work in or work through Ireland. We have about 700 people. Over the last 4 or 5 years we've grown by about 200. And whilst our main office is here in Dublin, we're about 500 people here.
Beautiful office too, by the way.
Beautiful office, good views. We have another big office in Belfast, but we have our offices in London, in New York, San Francisco, Palo Alto. And we have some really interesting programs with law firms in China and India as well. So Irish law firm, practicing Irish law, but a very, very much an international outlook.
A&L, what's that stand for?
So Alfred and Lewis were cousins, founded the firm many, many years ago, over 100 years ago. And I think they probably set the foundation of the firm. Came from the Midlands, moved to Dublin, and really from there our business has grown from the 70s when, ironically, the first office we opened outside of Ireland was in New York.
Okay, fantastic. And you know, law firms, sometimes people can have a perception that they're very large, snooty, sort of very, very formal. Doesn't actually feel that way here. How much of that is to do with you and you setting your tone?
So I think that you know, the perception of big law often comes from watching TV programs.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I come at it a little bit this way, that we're a people business. And in today's world, you've got to be friendly, you've got to be able to engage, you've got to interact with each other and your clients in a way that people want to do business with you. So yeah, we're often caught by the rule that you know, you're not able to disclose information about your client bases, which is absolutely appropriate. And that sometimes can give you that sense of being a little bit snooty, but no, I think we are just like any other business. You know, we want to be able to serve our customers and our clients really well, and that means you've got to be open and engaging with them.
But how much is it, you know, you see that, as you say, on the TV and these law firms. I know it's normally the States or the like, but they're like killing each other. Yeah. And they're the nasties that are going on in the background are, you know, crazy, and they die for the firm or die for their clients or the like. Is that real?
So I think that goes to culture, right? And some organizations are very comfortable with an aggressive culture where the individual fights hard for their individual benefit. I think that two of the things you mentioned, you know, passion about your clients and doing a really good job, yeah, that's the sort of thing that you would expect when you come in to this building. But actually, something our clients tell us, and we've done our own kind of internal surveys with our staff, the collegiality is something that's a real standout feature. It's what clients say, you know what, we compare your culture with those of your competitors and you just do things a little bit differently, the way you work together in our interests, so that our solutions and problems are either found or solved, rather than saying, my client, anyone come near and, you know, I'm going to make sure you disappear in the next promotion round. Okay,
I'm just interested, you know, people see you and they see that you got this job as managing partner at 38 years of age.
Yeah.
Like, that's scary. Number one, a lot of confidence to go for it, but I'd love to know how you actually just got to that stage at such a young age.
Sure. So my background, very quickly, I was born, raised in the north of Ireland, Belfast, College Scotland. Came back, did my professional exams in Queen's in Belfast, worked for a couple of years in one of the big law firms there, and said to myself, I want to do something a little bit different. So I was absolutely going to Dublin for 2 years, no more, just to get that experience and then come back home. And so that was, I think, 18 years ago. I worked in Dublin, loved it, went across to our London office, And the reason why I went there, a brand new partner, 3 months, was because in the interview for partnership I was asked would I ever consider going to our London office, and there really only was one answer. So I'd 7 years in London running an office in one of the most important capital centres of the world. It gave me a great opportunity to understand what Ireland was about, because we were constantly saying, here's why you need to do business with Ireland. Okay. And then beyond that, understanding the strengths of our firm. And I became managing partner at 38. Unlike the corporate world, I was elected into that role by my fellow partners. So they obviously decided that I was someone that they wanted to put into that position. And I was excited and challenged by it, a little bit scared from time to time.
So before we kind of come to that and the way it's structured here, I'm just kind of interested, was there anybody in your life who along the way kind of acted like a coach to you, or was there any moment that somebody did something or said something that made you feel, okay, actually I can do this?
So I think a couple of ways of answering that. Very early on, and the environment that I guess I grew up with and the school that I was in, you were very much encouraged to look to the very best around you, and also to look to things that you felt uncomfortable with, and judging yourself then how you would reflect in that. So I'd say there are many people I've come across in my life and in my work experience where I thought, you know what, that person did that thing really, really well, and I must try and manage that. So there's been lots of influences. I think, the beauty about my job here is I'm surrounded by brilliant people, and all the time you get a lot of inspiration from what they are doing. I spend a lot of time traveling because our business is so international, and I will be in Asia, and I will be in Europe, and I'll be over the United States. And I just love listening to people talk about their business, and not just in law. And you realize, look, actually I could learn from that, and there's good ideas. I think, one of the thing my management team know very well here is that I often say that some of my very best ideas are stolen from somebody else. And I think you should never be afraid as a leader to learn from others along the way.
Okay, interesting. When we were talking about sort of the structure, we talked about a company, Gore and Associates in the United States, and the leader is elected by the people, the employees, and for a lot of leaders in Ireland, when they hear that, they think that's kind of scary. And actually her performance appraisal is done by 18 people around the business too. So again, that seemed a bit scary, but that's kind of the life you live in, isn't it?
Sure.
I mean, there's a lot of people who could actually fire you today.
So the way it works is that the majority of our partners must vote in the managing partner. My term is terms of 4 years. I'm up for re-election every 4 years. And so at the start, people are taking a little bit of a bet on you, but correspondingly, you know that you have a big duty to each of them to be able to perform and lead them. So you're right, if partners didn't like me and the role that I was doing, then they could tomorrow have a vote and remove me. I'm really hoping they don't do that. But that brings an extra dynamic to what you do, and I think it's something that, going back to why is our firm called out as being collaborative? Well, ultimately we know that working together is better than individuals saying, here's what we're going to do, because you've got to take into account views and opinions of the leaders through the firm. But as a leader, of course, you've got to stretch that, and you've got to have a little bit of vision, and you've got to bring people along into places that sometimes are new, and maybe that brings some uncomfortable spots.
Because I'm really interested in that moment then, because you've got all of these people who are looking to you and they're saying, hopefully you're doing a good job. If you don't, we could have a conversation. And then you go and take a risk. And the risk is to ask people in this organization, what do they think? And you get the results. And they're not what you thought they'd be. What happened?
4 years ago.
Talk to me about that moment.
Take one step back. So when I took over this role, there were 3 key areas I really wanted to focus hard on. One was how we delivered better client service than anybody else. I realized very quickly to do that, you need brilliant people. And so there was an objective around how you attract and then keep and develop the very best people. And the third thing I knew we had to do 2010, I took over the world and the Irish market was in turmoil. I knew that we had to start thinking and doing things differently. And whether you call it innovation or whether you call it change or whether you call it reflecting what's going on, we knew those were three key things that we need to focus on. So when it came to people, very strong collaboration with clients, but I wondered, was there something that we were missing out on in terms of bringing our people a little bit more into what our purpose was, where we were going on our strategy. So I had 80 odd partners I had to convince that they were going to get personal feedback because they are owners and leaders in the business as much as I am. And I had a lot of people who for perhaps the first time had been given an opportunity to give feedback. And there was possible cynics on both sides. And I kind of said to myself, well, what could go wrong here? And I think I got the results back and there was lots of commentary, and I think I was really disappointed and sad because I'm very passionate about this business. I want us, and I know the people in our business do want us to be successful, but there's a lot of stuff there I said, wow, what have we been missing out on here? And I realized that the genie was out of the bottle. I'd asked and I couldn't say, well, thanks very much, now let's go back again.
If you had a chance, would you put it back in?
4 years on,
probably a moment.
Absolutely no way,
Okay.
because I think the benefits now, and there's many examples that I think I could give of where us engaging, us talking and listening have changed our approach to how we set strategy, how we move the business along, how we take decisions. And I think that it's a risk, and it's one of those risks you got wrong. You've got quite a lot of work to do. And I'm not saying that it's easy, or nor am I saying, frankly, that we're still on quite a journey along the way, because you constantly got to learn, and you can't take that for granted. But no, I think the book's still open.
Okay, because I remember that time, as I said, when we had the on-site, that I saw your car light on and you going over about 7:20 in the morning outside the office. It was great to see the passion you had for it too, and that was fantastic. So just in terms of where you've taken the organisation, so somebody joining in L Goodbody today, compared to somebody joining it 5 years ago, is it a different place because of the journey you've been on?
I hope it is. I believe it is, because when we have asked people and have kind of graded how we have performed over the last 4 or 5 years, actually it's our people who have changed, not me. And that was another learning that I took, that people decide whether you're a really good organisation. Your clients obviously will give you business depending on that, but people decide whether or not you perform at particular levels.
If I was to ask you, in what ways are you actually different as a business now?
So somebody joins our business now, I think the first thing that will happen is that they will have a very different opening engagement. We are much better at explaining to them what we're about, how to do business, support networks that we've got in. You're in the business after a month, someone will come and sit down and say, so how are you getting on? Okay. And so that initial entry point, I think a couple of other things really important in terms of change and who we are. One is communication, and the other is the approach that we have taken to being a much more responsible business. So communication.
Drill down in that.
Biggest lesson I learned. I love meeting people. I'm really interested in what they have, and I thought I was a good communicator. And it was only when I got the first results back that I realized that listening is actually as important, and sometimes not even more important than talking. And over the last 4 years, and again, there's room for improvement, but we have done a whole lot of things which have involved feedback and two-way communication and participation in things that we're trying to achieve. The very first thing that happened was a suggestion box. I wasn't in favour of it because I thought that was really not the right way, but actually it started off a process, and from there we went to our feedback survey, which the big deal for us was then sharing everybody what they'd said. That helped a conversation going. We set up a working group, and they got to come forward with whatever ideas that they wanted and thought they should change. Some were brilliant, some we felt, actually that doesn't work for the business at the moment. But all of a sudden people had a little bit more confidence that they could put their hand up and say, you know what, I don't think this is right, and here's an idea. We set up working groups with different parts of our business. I meet them 3 times a year, their agenda. any question about the business, where we're going, ideas, and small stuff like we have a monthly update now where I tell everybody what's going on in the business and giving the opportunity to shout out some people who have done some really good stuff or saying this part of our business is really important at the moment, and so the next time you're at your desk thinking about spending time, focus on that. A poster campaign every time we do something during the working week. So these are all things where we've tried to have a forum. So next, in 2 weeks' time, I have one of my regular kind of staff updates. I stand and kind of podium, say, here's what's been going on in our business, here's what's coming next. Someone gave me a tip that, well, why don't you ask people what they want to hear rather than you think they need to know? So the mail went out this morning actually saying, if you've got questions, let me know. Now, sometimes people are shy in coming forward with questions, but more often than not, they make their way through to you. So I think for me, communication was key, and hopefully if somebody joins our firm, they'll have way more information about our business than they would in other organizations. And there's a tension there because lawyers are bound by client confidentiality. By their very nature then, you're slow sometimes to tell people what's going on, but actually it's been very liberating as a business that by communicating people feel, I not only know what's going on, but maybe I've got the chance to put my say back in.
And let's say sharing strategy then as part of that process, can you give me an example of where you would have seen a light go on in somebody's, and they feed into that strategy?
Sure. First or second feedback session that we got, some of our team members said, you know what, we'd love to know what the strategy is for parts of our group. And that was fine. I did an all hands update, stood up there and said, look, we really want to do big complex work for large corporate clients who will probably have big legal teams, and we can support them and the issues that they have. And then technology. And an idea landed on my desk about a week later from one of our knowledge team who had listened to that and said to herself, oh, look, the firm has done a couple of apps, and we were one of the first firms around the world, I think, that used apps as a way to connect with clients. And she'd been given a really probably kind of dull task of collating all the continuing professional development hours that every lawyer is supposed to do. And she said to herself, you know what, I'm quite sure in-house legal teams have got exactly the same problem. And would we maybe use technology and tapping into them to make their jobs a little bit easier? And when that landed on my desk, I thought, there you go. They heard the strategy, they felt they could participate. We backed the idea, you can get it online. If we were a tech company, we'd probably be paying 79 cents and we'll be rolling it out around the world. But that's the type of moment I thought, that's really good about communication.
Okay, but so when I look at companies like law firms, I'm going, it's going to be hard work from the moment, the early hour you get here to the late hour you leave, maybe even weekends too. And no shock or surprise that in some of the feedback was like, this is hard. Where's my work-life balance, or my work-life blending as it's called now? You couldn't change the rules because that's life. But what has changed? Because the sense in the results is that it's got a little bit easier from a work-life balance point of view.
I think it's all relative. Okay? Maybe back up. Like many people businesses, it's not a case of turning a machine on and operating overnight. People respond to client needs, and for many clients, they have opportunities that must be executed really quickly. Maybe it's an opportunity, unless they move, they'll lose it. Maybe it's an injunction that's just been served on them, and we've got to react. So for us, we'll meet with our client, and you and I'll have a chat about the issue that you've got, and you'll go, that's brilliant, now can I have the paperwork tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock? So for a lot of people, that meeting is the end. For us, often it's the start, where you got to go back and start thinking about it and processing and preparing documentation and getting advice. And so the demands are not often on a 9-to-5 basis. I think the second feature is, I mentioned earlier, a lot of our revenue comes from international clients, many of it from the east and west coast of the United States.
Different time zone.
They don't work 9 to 5, us. So those are some realities, and work-life balance is something that is hard. to achieve. And I don't think law firms, frankly, are in a different place than many people now, because technology means your smartphone is ticking away all the time. But we had probably a more significant problem, and I think actually the first thing was, let's have a talk about it. What does this mean? And in many cases was we needed more resources, and we've worked really hard to try and build more resources to deal with the supply of work. And we're very lucky, we've been very successful in the marketplace in winning work, which brings more work-life issues with it. But we're 200 people bigger than we were 5 years ago. We are proactively recruiting all the time. We would bring in another 30 lawyers in the morning, and if we were able to get the quality that we know our clients want. So those factor in, but I think there's other stuff. We measure a lot of stuff here, and going back to kind of your TV show analogy, billable hours is what everyone talks about, lawyers, and you kind of measure that. Well, we actually started measuring it in the opposite way, in how many people were working too many late nights in a row. We looked to see who was working weekends and asking, was that because they had a pressing, urgent deadline that weekend, or is this not a bad habit that they were working through? Sometimes it's a combination of both, frankly. And the idea was, you go and have a chat with the person and say, look, we've noticed this is the level that you're working. You want to be careful, and maybe the next big case that you want to be on, you stand back from. That's the theory. The practical reality is making sure that you've got enough people who can move into that. That was one thing. We do that every month at our management meetings. Another thing we did, we brought in some flexible working trials to see how that would work. We increased the number of laptops, and everyone got smartphones so that you could check email rather than staying in the office late. We can do much more on this, and I think it's an issue that we struggle sometimes to just get our arms around because of the demands our client led. But I suppose we've improved our score by 100% in 4 years, but it's still not at a level that I think other organisations might have. But I know from talking to business leaders throughout the world that this is an issue that we're all grappling with, and you know what, it's getting the balance right. And there's a responsibility on an organisation, but what I've realised as well, there's a huge personal responsibility on the individual to say, actually, this is what I'm trying to balance too, and making sure the two fit together.
Because you did a bit of work on this, and it was kind of, when it came down to it all, it was about knowing what to say no to.
Yeah, and that's right. And like, small example, and again, it doesn't always work, but one of our groups was asked to go, well, okay, if you're unhappy with some of the work practices, i.e. the hours you're working, or how could you make your job easier, like what would you talk about? And there's some very practical stuff that came back. Look, if we go on holiday, we work really hard, try not to email us. And we go, okay, well, we try not to, and that's now kind of largely become a rule, sometimes broken.
Yeah.
But that's where you try and get to. The type of working hours, like when do you expect us to be in the office and when can we go home? Is it okay to leave at 5 to drop the kids off to school and log on back? And these are all things that we kind of thought, well, of course it is, but have never been properly expressed. And it's always getting that balance that, you know, our success is down to great people, and it's down to great clients continuously giving us work. And we're going to make sure that we get that balance that the client says, I need this delivered by X time, that we have got people at the right level in the, you know, the available time that we have. So there's a, it's, look.
But you also don't want people to burn out either. No. Because I mean, there's obviously prime business for that. Yeah. You know, because the deadlines don't go away. So the link between performance, obviously that's why you measure everything. Yeah. Just, can I ask you about pride in this organisation? Because we've seen it obviously increase significantly. Yeah. What do you think are the big drivers in terms of that?
I think going back to the people and the strategy there, you know that if somebody goes the extra miles because they feel that they are part of something that's bigger or better than just what they're doing. And one of the things we realized at the start, that like the firm has always had quite a focus towards what is now, I suppose, responsible businesses practice, CR, or however you might come across it. And we decided that actually with really brilliant people here, and some of the most amazing grads that you'll get out of college in Ireland, and they're being lawyers. And we thought to ourselves, well, should we be using skill sets here? And it's not just our lawyers, it's the rest of the firm. Should we be using our skill sets to help other people? So we came up with a program around corporate responsibility. We were the first Irish law firm I'm aware of that hired a full-time CR manager, Sinead Smith, done an amazing job over 4 years. And I'll cut to the chase. Every month we ask through our MP update people to talk about themselves, what sort of work they do, who they work with. And then we ask them, so like, what makes you proud of what you do? And I at the start was saying, well, there's that hostile takeover bid or that really important injunction that was there. And yes, there are people, and that's really good. But kind of 8 out of 10 people are saying it's the difference that we have made as a firm, and me personally, in some of the pro bono work that we've done, say, for the Irish Refugee Council, really hard social issues that you've got smart people trying to do work with. The work and the partnership that we've done with SUAS, an incredible organisation, helping literacy levels, because you know that if you don't improve literacy, you don't get a job. You don't get a job, you're in a very vicious cycle. So we have had at this stage hundreds of our staff work with kids all around this community on one-on-one paired reading. And we've already seen improved results in those schools and a bond. The work we've done with Social Entrepreneurs Ireland, another incredible organisation that is making social change in Ireland. And I guarantee you, I still have the notebook that I wrote before I became managing partner. I was working on, here's what I'm going to do. I didn't appreciate then that people saying, I am most proud of that, as an organisation that would bind us together in a way. So pride comes in many ways, but for us, I think it's doing a great job for our clients. It's being part of something that you can work together, but there's no doubt in my mind the fantastic work that everybody in this business does to society in a way that I think a lot of people more broadly wouldn't expect.
Behaviours in a business. The classic kind of look that you see on television again from law firms, partners, dog eat dog, maybe not treating other people with great respect.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was the case ever, but I'm just wondering, how do you try and make sure that people behave in the right way and that support staff in organisations are valued in the way they should be?
Yeah, so business services, because I think the main thing here is we're a service industry. We serve clients' needs, and one of the things that we've tried to talk about is, you know, the guy who is in our finance department asked to do a wire transfer. If he gets that wrong, the client says A&L messed up in a way that it's nothing to do with the lawyer. So that's the first thing, that trying to make sure that we understand. And we can do better in this as well, but we understand that everybody who works in here is working for one purpose. The guy who was sweeping the floor for Neil Armstrong going to the moon. So that's one thing. Behaviour is culture, right? People say you've got to have a great culture, but actually what is culture? Culture is about acceptable behaviour. We've tried hard to work on the things that we think are important to our organisation. I think behaviour is and needs to be addressed if it's out of line. And you've got to have confidence that you have an organisation that allows that to happen. And, you know, again, going back to comms, people may be afraid to come forward and say, I don't like the way that person treats me, because they might be afraid of what would happen to them in their job, etc., etc. Give them an independent forum to make that comment anonymously, and all of a sudden you allow that type of feedback to come through, and behaviour that seemed to be unacceptable is brought up, and you can try and address it. One of the things that we did, and I'll never forget, it was in a partners meeting, I stood up, and unusually for me, I hadn't really briefed partners as to what was coming next, and I said, so we've already done 360-degree feedback by our staff survey. I think we should do 360 feedback on ourselves. And that's lawyers and business service people giving feedback on the partners. And again, that was a little bit of a risk, but I'll tell you something. We got lots of really positive feedback about how we perform, but there were always 2 or 3 nuggets about if we did things a little differently, or if that was a bit better, or if I were able to do this a bit differently, then that make us all work together a little bit better. So it's being prepared, I suppose, sometimes not only to identify behaviour, but to allow channels where commentary around behaviour can be addressed if people don't want to bring it forward directly.
And that's being vulnerable as a leader,
yeah.
If you're going to accept feedback, but that's really how you grow. So the essence and the defining feature of a great workplace is the level of trust that exists in that workplace. And I'm just interested to know how trust works in terms of this kind of, in a law firm, because I'm thinking that, you know, solicitors are trained to kind of, you know, spot what's wrong and inconsistencies, and actually they're probably trained to reduce risk, and that's kind of the whole idea. But let's write it down, put it on a contract, you sign that, I'll sign this. Trust works in a completely different way. How hard was it to get people to kind of buy into the concept of building trust in relationships?
Yeah. So what's our core objective as a business? We want to be seen as our most trusted advisor to every client who comes along. And it's no surprise to me that if you want to be a trusted advisor, you've got to have trust. And I think the last 4 years have taught me, in an environment where you have lawyers who can be skeptical, that you earn trust. You don't take trust for granted, and you try and constantly build on it. And you can lose it quite quickly, and you can lose it where you know, things get hard. When you behave under pressure and in a way that people say, I'm not sure I like that anymore. So for me, it's about making sure that you earn it, and you do that by talking to people and understanding what's on their mind, and then making sure you act and behave in a fair way.
And for you, is there anything you've done differently from a trust building point of view? I mean, do you suddenly reassess relationships in terms of trust?
I think that I've probably been pretty similar in my approach to people in the organisation. I'm a great believer, as I was talking about earlier, you take what's really good out of people and see how you can make it better. I read something there a few weeks ago, and it was about really great leaders and characteristics that they have. Maybe sounds a little bit of a print in a page, but it said that, you know, great leaders find people who redefine success. And from my perspective, building trust is having confidence in people and saying, you know what, I think you can do this, and what can I do to help you make this happen? And once you do that, people have the knowledge that you'll support, but you'll also empower. And I think that is a very good tool as any leader as to how you might just make a little bit of a difference.
And was there anybody in your life who ever believed in you at a time that maybe you didn't believe in yourself?
I think that, again, I mentioned it earlier, you know, the role I have is a little bit different here to the CEO of most organisations. I've benefited hugely from partners who've walked into my room to talk about one thing, and I said, look, if you wouldn't mind, just I want to kind of bounce something else off you. And it is an incredibly supportive environment to work in. I have some phenomenally good business leaders in our business services group who, you know, sometimes my best ideas are simply polish on theirs. And I think I love getting people involved in projects and listening to what they have to bring. And, you know, so for me, I get a huge amount of support, at home. I think my wife knows me better than most, and more often than not, have a great day and just remember. And there often is a little bit of a line that sets you off at a bounce in your step. And, you know, so there's a couple of things.
You've got kids too, don't you?
3 boys, yeah.
So would you be encouraging them into follow your footsteps and into law and become a managing partner?
I think the truthful answer is this. To be happy in life, you've got to have a whole number of different things, right? But one of them is be passionate about what you're involved in. And if they get passionate about being lawyers, then I really hope they are successful in that career. But ultimately, it's about getting themselves to a spot that they feel they're comfortable in what they are contributing to themselves, to their families, and to the broader society too.
Cool. So just a final question. I'm just interested to know, you know, you took risks to bring the concept of Great Place to Work in here. For other sort of people, leaders, and organisations who are kind of a little bit wary, what advice would you give them in terms of, you know, the process and accelerating the knowledge to understanding what it's all about and the benefits, I suppose?
Yeah. So I think the opening point is, if you're very happy with your kind of average performance, don't do it. Because you'll always stay average, and you know, you can be good, but if you truly want to be great, and I think that the business environment that we work in at the moment, I'd say almost on an hourly basis, is asking you to change and develop And from my perspective as any business leader, I'd say, yeah, so what have you got to lose? And when you put that down on a page, put it to one side and then say, well, how could I make this better? And we all know that leaders are responsible for bringing people into a place and taking risks, but managing that risk and doing it in a way that people feel comfortable, but at the same time challenged. So for us, we've been very fortunate over the last 4 or 5 years where we have won some fantastic work. We've worked with some brilliant clients, some with really difficult issues, some with great opportunities, and our business has grown. We've expanded internationally. We've been very fortunate, and one of the things I'm most proud of our entire firm last year is that we were the first Irish law firm to be ranked as the European Law Firm of the Year. Is that a coincidence that we opened up this channel with our people 4 years ago? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but I'm convinced that that by having people who are engaged and understanding the part that they can play and recognizing that you're never finished and it's always stuff you can improve on, and never taking trust for granted, and being open about it and being honest, then you know what, you're going to get to the place you want to go to, otherwise stay average.
Julian, it's been an absolute pleasure to actually work with you over the last 5 years, and to see the firm grow and develop, and the behaviours bring you to where you want to go, and continued success in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, John.